You are listening to the Super Intelligent Podcast with Mike Elgin and Emily Forlini. I am not Emily, I am Mike, and we're here to talk about social media and all the damage that it's caused, all the problems it's caused, especially this week after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a political influencer. Emily, how are you?
I am good. It has been a long week, a lot of thoughts from it happening to processing it to who did it. And now, how do we make sure this does not happen again? And of course, what can we do to hopefully contribute to not having it happen again? And so I brought a list of tips. I guess we're thinking there's a connection between social media and all these shootings that are happening. Charlie Kirk, the Catholic school, Luigi Mangione, I mean, go on and on and on. And so, yeah, I thought we could go through a list of tips. I mean, see if we can break some new ground. Social media tips have been around for a long time, but we can kind of contextualize them for this type of thing, like ideologies that snowball out of control online. So what do you say?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. And I think that everyone who listens to this, if you agree with some of the tips, if you feel like the things that we tell you over the next hour or so are valuable to people you know, share this podcast with them and they can check it out themselves. We both have a lot to say on this topic. And one of the things that I have to say from the outset is that I've been arguing for many, many years that social media has a gigantic influence on the outcome of elections, on the social discourse, the political discourse, the division that everybody talks about in our society. And I've gotten into many debates on podcasts and on social media about this topic. I tend to be an impact maximalist, I guess you could say. I really think that social media has a huge, huge impact on culture, much more so than most people dismiss it and say, oh, nothing's really changed. We've always had disinformation. We've always had influencers, or we call them other things in the past, but we've always had them. I disagree. I think it's a whole new ball game, and I think it's super, super problematic. Have you noticed that in your life that there are lots of people who sort of dismiss this topic?
Actually, no. I think everyone in my life knows social media is huge. And if I look around at my life, everyone, if you're walking down the street in New York, everyone's on their phone. They're walking down the street looking at their phone. What are they doing on their phone? They're scrolling social media. Maybe they're writing an email, but that'd be very hard to do at this scale. Maybe they're sending a little text, but I see a lot of thumbs moving up and down, a lot of scrolling. Yeah, people are getting a thumb workout. So everyone's on it to the point that people almost don't talk about it anymore. And I've started to be able to, you can detect when people are saying something that's a trend online. So like one of my brothers, kind of has been a little bit radicalized, like on Twitter and stuff like that. And sometimes he'll say something, to get the conversation going. And since I'm on Twitter a lot, I write about Elon Musk a lot. I'm kind of in the manosphere, as they call it, because of my line of work. All the people I write about are in it. So I can now pick out things he says, or friends will say things like, oh, I know that's a TikTok trend. So it's kind of this thing where everyone's doing it all the time. No one's talking about it, but it is absolutely bleeding into real life. What about you?
Yes, it is. And exactly. I mean, the problem that I've noticed, one problem with the political discourse that I've noticed is that I remember a time when people would disagree about their political opinions. We've had left, right, Republican, Democrat for a long time. And back in the day, people would disagree about fundamental things. Like when Ronald Reagan was the president, for example, going way back, he basically felt that we needed a trickle-down economic policy. People on the left said, no, you're trickling all over, people who need, food assistance and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't really work. It's just a what they were disagreeing about was their opinions. Mm-hmm. Now, almost nobody disagrees about opinions. They disagree about what the facts are. And I think there'd be a lot of agreement about opinions if we could agree on the facts. But everybody got their own set of facts. So if you're on one side of the political spectrum or the other, and most people are, because it's very, very difficult and uncomfortable to be in the center. If you're a centrist, both sides are yelling at you. Everybody hates you, right? Basically. So you pick a side. And then when you argue with somebody on the other side, they're vexed and perplexed and confused and angry. But this whole set of things you never even heard about, and vice versa. We all have our own set of things that, we're being manipulated. A lot of this is through social media, it's through influencers, it's through television too. A lot of it is through social media, influencers, algorithms, all that kind of stuff, which, everybody's trying to make an impact. And the way you make an impact in politics is you mobilize people. And how do you mobilize people? You scare the shit out of them.
Yeah, you create villains. So you create a lack of empathy for the other side. It's almost like war. All armies do this around the world. Make the person you're fighting against seem like a different race, a different species. So you can literally kill them in that context and not, hopefully, they think, not feel bad about it. But of course, people get PTSD. But in the political sphere, you have to it's become so hard to have compassion for people on the other side. They're dealing with money trouble, health, chronic illness, alcoholism, what everyone is dealing with. And that discussion is gone. And it's like we are so afraid to not know something. Like there's no culture of I don't know anything. I want to learn, People instead go out, you're forced to have a hot take, you're forced to know everything, and there's no fertile ground for new ideas because no one wants to admit on social media, like, I don't get this. I mean, like I had to look up Charlie Kirk after the shooting, and it was almost like no one was talking about that. Like everyone instantly knew who he was. And I think everyone was kind of throughout the course of the week, like, wait, who is this guy again? And, no one talked about that. You just go straight to what happened and your hot take on it. And it's like 0 to 100 and everyone knows everything, but also the dialogue is so thin at the same time.
One of the controversial things about Charlie Kirk actually is he's somebody who his whole shtick, like a main thing he's famous for, is he goes to college campuses and he challenges people on the other side of the political spectrum to debates. And he's got all kinds of opinions. His whole goal, it seemed like, would be to show leftists how wrong they are, how their beliefs are based on false assumptions and stuff like that. But that's why people didn't like him, because he was somebody who talked to the other side. He was somebody who engaged in debate. And there are a lot of things he said that are going to be objectionable to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. A lot of things he said that are just exactly right on to a lot of people. But the point is, he's one of these, he's not a centrist at all. He was, very right-wing Christian, but he was always talking, always talking to the other side, not the same side, which is what's normal. There are other people that, like, so many people dislike Bill Maher, whose show, Real Time, is super controversial because he talks to everybody. He's way outside the Overton window, which is the acceptable range of things that are okay to talk about, right? That's the Overton window. Talk to Steve Bannon, for example. He talks to communists. He talks to all these different people, and that's why everybody dislikes him. It's not acceptable in this hyper-polarized world to take the bad people seriously, right? Because we've been conditioned to think that people on the other side of the political spectrum are just bad people. They're evil. This is a big part of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think also I don't agree with virtually anything he says, although I know where he's coming from because I have had conversations with people on both sides of the aisle, so it doesn't shock me. But at the same time, I mean, speaking of social media topic, he really got famous through social media because those videos are kind of like little treats on the TikTok feed, wow, look, he really, really got that stupid liberal, is the vibe. Like that's the feeling that he wants to give you at the end.
The biggest problem to me with social media, I've come to believe, is that by its very nature, it's delusion creating. It creates delusions. The delusions are baked in. So we love the podcast medium because it's very natural. Right? It's a couple of people talking in the case of this particular podcast, and it's very intimate, and you, the listener, feel like it's the three of us in a room just having a conversation to a very large extent. And psychologically, there's some level of the listener who feels like it's a natural conversation and they're part of it. And this is a delusion. What's really happening is you and I are talking to each other and recording it, and we're putting it out there, and then people are observing our conversation. And we have a smallish, newish podcast, but there's some of these podcasts have millions of listeners and viewers, and it still feels super intimate. And another even more damaging delusion that it creates is the delusion that all the world's troubles are affecting you personally, and that maybe you personally should do something about it. And so that's where we get into people who turn their whole lives over to political fighting for their side online, on social media. This is where we get to people who kind of, with a couple of screws loose, who go out and start shooting people. So without that delusion, I don't think social media would have the harmful effect that it does. Now, social media has there are really wonderful things about it, but it's delusion creating. It makes you feel all kinds of things that are not natural for people to feel. On Instagram, for example, there are people who look at Instagram feeds and feel completely inadequate because what they think they're seeing is people who are super beautiful, who have an amazing life, who are just eating strawberries and Cappadocio in a hot air balloon and drinking champagne, and that's their life. And like, why am I slumped over this keyboard in this thankless job, slaving away in this cubicle? When people, but the whole fabulous lifestyle thing is a complete delusion. It's a complete delusion. And so it's dangerous for that reason, because it puts us into a frame of mind that's not natural. It's not honest. It's not really, we don't really perceive the world as it is when we perceive the world through social media. And that's a really big problem.
Yes. And one of the tips on this list, which is by no means an official list, it's just something I collected looking through many, many tips of its type on the internet. One of them relates to what you're saying, I think could go back and forth. So it's look through your friends and followers and unfriend people whose accounts make you feel bad about yourself. I think if you're following someone who, I mean, maybe I should unfollow you, Mike, because you're, traveling around the world eating amazing food and wine. So there's that. But no, you're worth a follow. But yeah, someone who's using AI to look amazing and they're traveling the world and you don't like it, or maybe it's a friend, maybe it's someone who you just don't like them, and you don't really need to always be connected to everybody all the time. Like you can turn people loose. What a concept these days. Everyone is always in our orbit. So I agree with this one. I think a counter argument is if it is intellectually opening your mind to not narrow your echo chamber. Maybe you follow Charlie Kirk because he's so different from you and you want to see what the other side is up to, or vice versa. Maybe you follow, AOC because she seems so leftist to you and you want to know why people feel that way and who is resonating with. So I don't know. I could go both ways, but I do unfollow people. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about this one?
I agree with you completely. In fact, I think you should block people like it's a bodily function. It's not a slam on people. You're not doing something to somebody if you block them. The truth is that if you're on a social network, let's say you're on, what are you on? You're on X, let's say. Okay, there's hundreds of millions of people on X. You're going to encounter only a tiny fraction of 1% of those people. So you might as well be deliberate about it. And when you block somebody, that means they can't see your stuff. You don't see their stuff. That's fine. That you're just making that person join the 99.99% of the people that you'll never engage with. And it's a really, really healthy thing to do. I've had multiple cases where I've blocked people and they've found another social network to contact me on and say, why did you block me? How could you block me? And like you say, you don't have to have a reason. There doesn't have to be any reason. And I've actually told people who are really nasty and really disingenuous and really dishonest and kind of trollish and negative and overly critical. But instead of what they're trying to do is they're trying to bait you into a bickering session about that. So they, go back and forth. But I just end it all and just say, I just don't like you and I don't have to follow you. That's it.
That.
It's fine. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And so this is I've been thinking all day about a solution to the larger problem of the sorted information, of AI slop, of AI generated content and all this stuff. And I think ultimately the solution is that mindset. You're only going to ever encounter 0.001% of the internet, 0.001% of the people on any social network. So be deliberate about which 0.001% you engage with. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can make your life much, much better by just opting out of the automated, algorithmically generated sewage that comes at all of us all the time. We really can opt out of these things.
Yes. And I totally agree. I am even more savage with it, where I will stop it at the root. Like I really consider, especially on Instagram, if I want to accept a follower. So there was a situation where this guy was kind of entering friend group that I was in, and I met him in person, and I was like, whoa, I do not like that guy. And he was very offensive, really did not appreciate anything he was saying, but I knew I was still going to be around him at times because he was kind of like just around socially. And one day I get a little friend request from him, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to see you in person. I don't want to see you on Instagram. I don't need to see what you're posting and all that stuff." And I didn't accept it, and my friends were like, "Wow, you didn't accept it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I don't want to connect with him in that way. I mean, I'm protecting my digital peace. I will see him. I'll be nice to him. I do not want to connect with him on the internet and just be on a Sunday night seeing his content." Like, I was surprised that people thought that was so mean and so restrictive, and I didn't register it that way at all. I thought I was just so clear on I don't want to connect with them that way, and I don't have to be connected online with everybody I know.
Exactly. And in fact, we all probably have relatives that we shouldn't connect with online for exactly the same reason. Everybody has to make up their own, decision on this kind of thing. But I think that if we can agree on this tip, the tip is don't ever follow somebody who you don't want to follow. It's like in real life, you don't have to talk to people you don't want to talk to. People can't force. It's the same thing online. It's even more so online. You can actually live in a fantasy world of wonderful people online. That's what the tools allow you to do. Where and this is what I try to do. And like in my online world, everybody's like super smart and constructive. Almost everybody. I'm happy to follow the people I know. My actual friends, of course, I want to follow them. But I don't need social networks to have friendships. What I need social networks for is to find and follow really, really intelligent, interesting people who are intellectually stimulating to read their stuff or see their videos. And you can just like craft a world of your own invention full of creative, interesting, fantastic, loving, friendly, nice, considerate people. Like imagine. Like social media can be the opposite of what it is for most people.
Yeah, my ideal scenario is everybody who posts takes time. They're, elevating my thoughts. They're creative. So anyway, I agree. So the next tip, I'm going to move on, is something I don't actually do well at all, which is designate specific hours for social media usage. So this is something we force on kids these days. There's a lot of parental controls. They set time limits, and we're doing this to our kids, but us grown up kids, I think, are largely lawless, doing it at a stop sign, doing it before bed, when we wake up, on lunch breaks. I'm one of those people, and I wish I wasn't. And so I don't set limits. Do you set limits, and what do you think about that?
I tend to have limits thrust upon me from just my lifestyle. I'm not as disciplined as I like to be. The fact is that the way that I live is, I take a lot of airplanes. I don't ever get the Wi-Fi on the airplanes. And so coming here to Europe, it was 2 flights. It was a day and a half basically of travel and no social media all that time. And then I do a lot of like running around. So today, for example, we went to a winery. We were there for hours. We went hiking in this place that had all these Etruscan ruins and all these waterfalls and stuff like that. It was really beautiful. No social media. Then we went to this little cafe and had like an aperitif. Not much social media, maybe a bit. And then we went to this restaurant that had no connection because it was like in this really old city, almost underground. So there's no possibility of having any sort of connection. So basically my whole day, I didn't have any social media. I often have days like that where I simply can't connect, and it works out great. I'm really lucky that that I'm forced by circumstances, happy ones, to not connect. Problem is it's a compulsion, right? So when things get boring, there's nothing to do, you're waiting, you just fire Instagram or something else and just start kind of being stimulated by whatever random thing happens on these social networks. But it really is a good idea to limit it. And a great place to start is first thing in the morning. If you can go a few hours in the morning, your energy will be spent, on more creative, productive pursuits if you're not on social media.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things I could think of I could do. Yeah, not do it in the morning or not do it at night. You could also give yourself an allowance, only 2 hours across the whole day. I do get sick of social media. It's just the same crap over and over again, whether it's about Charlie Kirk this week, something else next week. I got to think about what I could do, because it depends on your routine, but maybe picking morning and night, I think, is the clearest. So anyway, if any people have thoughts, let us know. But the next one actually dovetails into that, which is to have concerted detox periods. So that could be deleting an app for 2 months. I don't know. I mean, detox is extreme. Like, what do you think of when you hear that word?
It works for some people, it doesn't work for other people, I think. I know some people who delete all social media off their phone. And so they'll allow themselves to do social media when they're sitting on a laptop, but not on the phone. Other people do vice versa. The problem with vice versa is that you've got your phone when you're on your laptop or on your computer, or whatever, you still have your phone. And so you can still jump on social media if that's where it lives. But if you take it off your phone, there are many circumstances where you don't have easy access to it. That works for some people. Instagram is highly optimized for a phone. You almost can't use it exclusively on a desktop or laptop. But most other social networks, you can just take them off your phone and just never do it on your phone. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, so I think all of this just boils down to boundaries, like having concerted boundaries with the internet, which we kind of just stumbled into this thing, the internet. Like, how do we manage it? Now we're using it all the time. So establishing your own boundaries that work for you is important. Not because you're going to spiral out of control and become an extremist and, take it out on somebody. It's just that I've been thinking this week, we like to say, oh, that person's crazy. They're using social media wrong. How did they get so radicalized? Like, look at them. But I think we all contribute to the internet as long as we're posting on it, we're using it, we're liking things. We are all creating a culture. So I think there is a bit of personal reflection involved. Am I really showing up online in a way that I stand by? I know you might be online at 3 a.m. and you're not thinking, do I stand by this? But in a perfect world, we would all be thinking that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. The fourth and final tip I brought, we've been dancing around, which is to use social media, specifically not the internet, social media, with intention, with a purpose, to learn and inspire yourself, not compare.
That's a great one. One of the keys there is tip one, which is to block the people who are taking you away from that, shrink the number of people you interacted with, and just have the highest quality people you can. I believe that a lot of people online are trolls and they don't know they're trolls. And I think the way this happens is there's a heated discussion, there's a bunch of comments, they say something very rational and sane, and everybody ignores them and they feel terrible. They feel unseen. They feel unheard. They feel like they're being treated as somebody who's irrelevant. And then at some point they express a thought that's just a little off, just a little wrong. They kind of know it's wrong. They kind of know that they're slightly dishonest. And then the whole conversation turns to coming after them. And now they're the center of attention. And they're like, oh, wow, this feels so good. Like, this feels great. Everybody's talking about me and talking to me. And now I feel seen, right? And so they sort of develop this subconscious tactic when they're online to always sort of tweak people, always kind of just innocently kind of get people emotional based on what they say. And there are millions of people who have fallen into this trap of trying to feel validated, and they do it through trolling, and they don't know that that's what they're doing. And so that's a perfect reason to block somebody or unfollow somebody. If they're just off and they haven't really done something like really bad, they haven't said something truly awful, but they kind of make you feel bad again and again. So boom, get rid of them. Just always be looking for the positive people. Try to build a paradise of people who make you feel invigorated, who enhance your life, who inspire you, and who give you hope. They sort of give you faith in humanity as opposed to the opposite. I think that's one way to look at it. But the key is tip one, which is you have to always be looking for new people and always be looking for people who don't make the cut.
Yeah, and I like social media that you don't necessarily have to follow people. So Pinterest is a good one, underutilized, highly inspiring. It's like a mood board for your ideas you want to bring out, and Pinterest is great. And even actually shockingly to me, Gen Z is using it the most of anybody. And it's a really good way to assemble your ideas and your visions and come up with something new. And so social media doesn't have to just be tweet-like posts, or even on TikTok. Like, it's not really a follow your friends thing, at least in my world, but it's fun to follow people who have creative hobbies, like they do something amazing with paper or scrapbooking, or they run a farm, and they are caring for horses and telling you about that. And so there are ways to learn and get out there and find new content that's not just a written post and somebody's take. So I think also keeping a broad vision of social media, because how are we going to make new and better ones if we're all just perfecting the tweets? Like maybe we can move on a little bit.
Yeah. So I have some unpopular opinions about social media. So one of them is that actually, if you're looking for a sort of smarter class of people to follow, Substack Notes, a social network nobody's ever heard of, is a great option because basically most of the people on Substack are writers. And, many of them write stuff you don't care about or you disagree with or you find objectionable, but many of them are actually really smart. And so it's a really, really smart crowd. And the ratio of writers to readers is totally out of whack. It's almost everybody's a writer. But if you're a reader and you want interesting people, you can find really interesting, really intelligent people writing really high quality content on Substack Notes. Substack Notes is different from subscribing to people somewhat. So if you subscribe to people, you get their newsletter. If you follow somebody on Substack Notes, you get their posts, right? And probably links to their newsletter as well. But Substack Notes is one example. Blue Sky is a place that is pretty good. They don't really have an algorithmic sorting on Blue Sky. So you can go to Blue Sky. It's an engaging place. You can build lists of really great people and just follow the list, or you can just see the people that you follow. You don't have to get the manipulation of an algorithm. Facebook, I go to Facebook because I got a ton of relatives on Facebook and a few friends who are nowhere else to be found. It's full of slop and garbage. So it's a kind of a danger zone because it's like a minefield of just junk, and you have to kind of expose yourself to junk if you want to engage with those people. So, I try to avoid it, but every once in a while I go in to see how my uncle is doing and, that kind of stuff. X is just an absolute shit show. I don't even read anything on X. I just post there for the people who still follow me on X and don't really want to go anywhere else. I go to Threads for reasons I can't even explain to myself. There's nothing happening there. I'm kind of shadow banned by Meta in general. So like on Instagram and Threads and everywhere else, I just get no engagement because I went on this whole series of trying to get everybody to get off of Facebook, and I just got on the shit list for Facebook, and now I'm just completely shadow banned. But still, all the meta social networks are both horrible. There are people who are only on Meta, like so many people are only on Meta social networks. So that's a problem. So I don't know what to tell you. Find your favorite social network. There are no good social networks. If you think that you're crazy and can't seem to find the good one, there isn't a good one, as far as I can tell. They all suck in different ways. And so I like to just sort of use them all strategically. I only read on one or two of them. I post on all of them because I have columns to sell and books to sell and stuff like that. But really, I mean, Substack Notes is pretty good and Blue Sky is pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I think the ones I've talked about are pretty much what I use. Do you think the original social network, the human beings that we know, are highly underutilized these days because there's this whole culture, again, like I talked about earlier, of everyone knows everything and no one wants to, appear like they don't know something. And now that you can just, oh, look it up, look it up, look it up. I find people don't always ask basic questions and don't always get in a dialogue. And there's also a culture of, people don't always ask for help. They don't, people might rather post online, hey, like travel recs for Paris. And, why not have a bunch of people over and say, hey, has anyone been to Paris? What did you like about it? Like that's an underutilized thing. Or, even, I'm having a back issue and I'm sure people would really have thoughts about that. Everyone does, so I think I think hopefully with the temperature dialing down on politics, some of the opening up can happen and people will be less afraid to ask questions because they'll be less afraid to get in some crazed snit about who knows what. But in general, I think, really thinking like, who do I know? What do they know? What can I ask them about? And that's a thought pattern I think that we've kind of abandoned because it's just like, oh, I'll look online. So I think we should bring that back.
Absolutely. I have a friend who he and two friends, they're married to each other, and they have a makerspace in a little town in Provence. And they have the coolest thing going on at this makerspace because it's in a small town, a beautiful town. They were, they set this thing up, and what they discovered very early was that you have all these young people who are, they're kind of programmers. They're into 3D printing. They do all kinds of, they do laser cutting, and they're adept at those kinds of things. But they have no idea how to make a chair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they have all these old people who know how to make chairs and plumbing and do all this, like those kinds of things that the young people don't know how to do. And so the young people and old people are teaching each other these skills. So they're teaching old people how to do 3D printing, and 20-year-olds are learning how to make furniture. And this is amazing. This is like, what a great dynamic for a small town. The fact that I travel all the time, I'm always meeting people in real life, and it's the best thing ever. There's no substitute for getting out there and meeting people. It's uncomfortable at first, and it's just a skill that you can learn. And it's really, we gotta break the cycle of social media delusion. Social media makes you think the world is a certain way, and the world is not that way. And it makes you think that the world is far worse, far more death, far more violence than ever. And in fact, there's less. And it makes us feel like there's a lot more. And so go outside, look around, and that's your world, is the world. And the social media world is a big pile of delusion that is controllable by people with all kinds of motivations and incentives to freak you out and keep you in a state of constant stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wrong and bad, and we're going to get past it someday. But you can get past it today by just understanding that it's affecting you. Like that, this is one of the biggest delusions of social media, which is that other people are negatively affected, but you are negatively affected. You, Emily, are negatively affected, and I, Mike Elgin, am negatively affected by this stuff. And so we can't think that, oh, it's like those other people. No, it's us.
Yes.
It's affecting us.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. The problem is it's just really, it's hard to make friends. It's hard to put yourself out there. It is uncomfortable to go somewhere for the first time. It's, if you join something or you're meeting people for the first time, it's a little bit hard. I mean, it depends your social tolerance. Maybe you think it's great and instantly enjoyable. For me, I take a couple, times to go somewhere and feel fully comfortable. Like I've moved a lot, moved around the country, and I've set up new communities and different places, different states, and it takes time. It really does. I think it can even take a year or more to really feel at home. So, and you compare that to just going online and working out your thumb with the scrolling from anywhere, that's where people just get caught. So I think, hopefully we're not being too preachy, but it is good to make a point that, it might actually be harming you to not do a mix of, or doing too much, having no boundaries, being online too much, and not having even time to think like, where else could I go to meet people in real life? So I have done that. Like I said, I'm not just preaching like from I don't do it. Like I said, I've moved. I've had to do this many times. I moved about a year ago. I've joined local organizations, and I'm still getting used to them. I'm still meeting people, but about a year later, I'm starting to settle in. And so you just have to be really patient, and just because you're not comfortable at first, you have to keep going. And maybe if you're uncomfortable, you leave a little early if you're not feeling it. You have to just figure out like how you're going to get yourself out there. I think it's very personal, but just in my experience, it takes a lot of time and practice.
and a great principle to live by is never socialize with a bot, an agent, an AI
Yes.
chatbot, a Grok avatar. Use AI for information and for that kind of thing, but never let yourself socialize with something that isn't a person. We have the impulse and the need to socialize with people because we need people in our lives they complete us, and we are social creatures. And so it's really kind of a necessity. There are all these products that have been constructed to fill in that need and make it easier for you to gratify the need to socialize, right? That's what social media is. That's what AI stuff is, that are designed to be relationship type things. But just because somebody invented a product doesn't mean they're actually going to give you what you need as a human being. And so, like you said, you got to get out there and live in the real world. We have to turn this thing around. And once you actually go out in the world and you'll interact with people and you'll talk to a bunch of people and you have a great time and have fun, and then you'll realize I have no idea what their politics is. No idea, and I don't care. So
Mhm.
that's the real for you. It's very different from the social media world.
I feel like we're almost a little bit somber because this is just
Yeah.
we cannot solve this problem. It's been years and years, and recently it feels like it's getting worse. People are being shot now, and I'm just a little bummed out about it. It's like, where is this going? And am I going to live like this the rest of my life with, social media induced delusions that turn to violence? I don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really one of the skills we have to master in the world we live in. And the skill I'm talking about in particular is to detect when we feel a compulsion that's been engineered to drag us into somebody's product, right? So if you just like have to get on that social media feed and see what's happening, okay, recognize that feeling, because what that feeling is that you're being manipulated into engaging with somebody's product, and you're being used, right? Your life is being damaged to some degree for the benefit of somebody else. And so this is no way to live. So live your own life and take control of your thought process, and don't let anybody monetize it and turn you into somebody who's just there to serve Elon Musk, or just there to serve Sam Altman's grandiose aspirations.
Oh man. Yeah, it is a priorities thing, personal priorities. And I think society has made checking social media a priority, and knowing what's going on at all times. Immediacy has become a priority instead of, I don't know, joy, instead of seeking love and fun. We actively prioritize going online and feeling awful. We do it again and again and again all day, and doom scrolling has just become, I guess, a priority. And so maybe it's taking a step back and looking at your time and saying, does my time reflect the priorities I aspire to? And I mean, that's something I could do. I don't know if that's like a weekly thing, but maybe maybe after a shooting is a good time.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And let's hope that some good comes from all this somehow, and people start to like reconsider. I mean, I don't really see it yet, but again, it's like people can do what they're going to do, and we have to live our own lives and not live the whole world and live all the crises of the whole world all the time, or even any of the time. So hopefully we can cultivate ignorance about the things that are happening that we can't do anything about, that are just negative, that are part of movements that people are trying to co-opt us into, and we can opt out of all those things and live a good life, and be happy and engage with the people around us, and all that kind of stuff. I think we're in agreement. We're supposed to debate things on this podcast, but I think we're very much in agreement on this general topic.
Well, it's a moment when I think a lot of people are in agreement, which is rare. And by that, I mean, actually, that's not even true. I'll debate myself. I don't think what I just said is true. I think there were a lot of mixed reactions to that shooting. I did see a glimmer of an emergence of people being like, okay, I'm seriously sick of this on both sides, and condemning violence. And I saw a glimmer of agreement. So I'll say that. I will say there was certainly not widespread agreement on what happened, but there's a glimmer. So I wanted to honor it in this episode and hope for more. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say this week.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Well, I think we've said it, and this episode has been less fun than usual, but that's okay. And but I also think it's been more profound than usual. This is really the crisis of our time. This whole information space. We didn't even get into deliberate disinformation. One of the points I made on Blue Sky, I think a couple of days ago, was that this shooting takes place in the wake of two things that have happened that are kind of interesting. There's social networks like Facebook have given up on moderation, and the US government has given up on fighting foreign disinformation, which is largely aimed at artificially dividing our society. And so those two things are new factors, actually, that added to the mix. But again, the larger picture is there are so many people who want to use you and manipulate you for their ends, whether it's Russia, whether it's influencers, whether it's the owners of social media, whether it's political movements, whatever it is, there's so many people who want to use you for their ends. And so if you look at it that way and understand it that way, it's a little easier to opt out.
Mm-hmm. That's a good message. I guess, yeah, we were more profound this episode. I think that's fine. We don't always have to be fact heavy. We're like Jimmy Neutron. We just have these like big heads.
We're exactly like that.
Yeah. So I'll close it out. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Super Intelligent Podcast with our super intelligent listeners. As you've noticed, we don't have any ads, no promotions, no nothing. So we're just here for good dialogue with each other, with you. And so we would really appreciate any stars on Spotify is my current initiative. I would love if we could get more of those. Reviews anywhere, sharing with your friends, emailing us. So any extra step you can take after listening, we really appreciate it. But also just thanks for being here and have a great week.